Hello and welcome to another Mental Wealth Moves podcast. I'm your host, Casey Dubervik. Today's episode, we have a very special guest, Erin McDonald. She's the owner and founder of 8Wellness Collective. She also has her own podcast, Stop Talking About Fat Loss, and we'll get right to it. Yours is green. Is mine green?
Yours is green.
Okay,
yep.
Perfect. Yeah. All right, that's a good sign.
Okay, that means it works.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
cool.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming today, Erin.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time and like everything you're doing for yourself and the community. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's super great to be able to take the time to do this. I know you've been doing a lot as always. Like you're super successful and super busy.
Well, thank you.
Wanna, talk about some of the rad stuff you've been up to lately?
Do a lot of stuff. I own a wellness coaching company called 8Wellness Collective, where we help women come outside of diet culture, build lean muscle mass, overcome metabolic conditions, PCOS, perimenopause and menopause, just kind of forget diet culture. I have my own personal background in mental health. I'm not a mental health professional, but I've kind of been able to ingrain mindset work with health work in order to help women to become healthier as well as achieve their body composition goals. Personally, we just finished a house build in Mexico. So we are hoping for dual citizenship in Mexico and the US coming up here shortly. I have 3 dog children.
Fur babies.
Fur babies, husbands. I have my own podcast called Stop Talking About Fat Loss. It's a conversation about wellness and mindset as opposed to just talking about one part of the equation. So it's a different conversation if anybody is interested in that. And yeah, and then I train and I eat healthy and maintain my own health.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you've been up to a ton. Yeah, no, I love what you said about getting away from the diet culture, because I think, like, I like to say everything in moderation, including moderation.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, there's just so much, like, people think, like, this is bad and this is good. And being able to get away from that and recognize kind of the dose makes the medicine, right, and the dose makes the poison.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah. So I love what you're doing with 8Wellness. I know you've got like huge online community and following, and you're working remotely and doing like lots of cool things and helping people learn how to help themselves. Yeah.
I mean, my ultimate goal is just to be able to help people. So we do a lot of community work. We do a lot of free stuff. I have, like you said, a huge online community on Facebook. We do the starting steps for free. And then really my paid coaching is just if somebody needs additional support or wants somebody like me to walk them through it step by step, because I know how hard it can be to find a real voice in wellness. I mean, there's just so many conversations about what to do, what works, pharmaceuticals, not pharmaceuticals, keto, not keto, should I eat carbs? Like there's so much noise and it's so confusing. And especially for women, it can be highly predatory. And there's a lot of trauma involved in our body compositions. And so for me, I want to give women, I work with men too, but it's primarily women, a safe space to talk about their past diet history, what's frustrated them, and how it correlates to how they lived their life, and give them the results that they want. It's not about, like, there's some people who are fully against body change, and it's like, we can change our bodies, we can look hot, there's nothing wrong with being hot. I want to, like, I'm 42 and I want to be in a bikini and look good. That's okay, but we also have to approach it in a way that is set up for success and set up for health, as opposed to just seeking fitness.
Right. Yeah. You can be very unhealthy and overweight. And you can be very unhealthy and very thin.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Yes.
And I love that, like, feeling hot, because I feel like, there's such an overlap, like having that, like, I love having a six pack when I have my six pack, and like, I feel better when it's not just like skinniness, I feel better when it's fitness. And like, I feel mentally fit and I feel psychologically fit and, I feel physically fit.
Exactly.
Like it should be an overlap between all those things. I love what you're doing, and I love that you talked about the trauma
Yeah.
too, because like in psychiatry anymore, I don't like any diagnoses besides trauma, because I
Mhm.
think everything comes from trauma and everything's kind of a coping strategy
Yeah.
for that trauma. And you did bodybuilding, so good
Yes.
job bouncing
Yeah.
back from that.
Thank you. Yeah.
And marathon, you did a full marathon.
I
Like,
did.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, see, speaking of trauma.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
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 Tell us about like lead up to those things and the training and how to bounce back from that, because I know even in my circle, people have done the bodybuilding and then they have a hard time kind of coming back from that, where they can put the pieces together and come back to normalcy, because that kind of training isn't sustainable, I feel like.
No, neither one are.
Mhm.
Unless, I mean, this is professional level sporting events, which people don't really understand, especially full marathon running and, of course, bodybuilding. So I didn't know that.
Mhm.
I just looked at these beautiful people and I was like, yeah, I want to look like them.
Right.
And nobody tells you that that's not their body through the whole year. That is their
Mhm.
body for about 2 seconds on stage. Then they get off stage and they have a burger and they don't even look the same anymore.
Right.
Do they look fit? Yeah, they
Yeah.
absolutely they do.
Uh,
But I had to go through that process and realize how unsustainable it was. I mean, my first bodybuilding prep, I ate the same foods over and over and over again for an entire year.
wow.
I didn't have a sip of alcohol. I think I went out to eat one time. And even when I went out to eat, I went and got like chicken and vegetables.
Mhm.
And that's silly. You know, like you're going out to eat at a restaurant. Like wellness is also about community. It's about enjoying life. It's about celebrating things.
I love that.
And so you need that as part of your full wellness. It isn't just about what you look like, it's about how you think. And I come from that extremity, and then also like I just have a type A personality. So
Mhm.
my brain told me that it had to be extreme for it to work.
Right.
And it's taken me now, you know, I started in 2018. I mean, I think I've been on my wellness journey for a majority of my life. I grew up in the 90s, and that heroin chic body was in, super, super thin, Paris Hilton, like that kind of look.
Mhm.
And my body was never going to look like that. Well, no one tells girls that your genetics play a role in whether or not you're able to have those like thin arms, I didn't have that. And so not for lack of trying,
Right.
it was my genetics were just not going to let me have that. And so I just kept trying the most extreme things possible. And I was telling you before we jumped on, I had bone damage in my shins from overtraining when I was running and trying to run marathons. And then it was a disordered eating pattern from eating, literally the same thing every day for 365 days. And then I wanted to eat a pizza and would feel guilty, or I'd then eat the entire pizza. And it's like, no, we don't need to do that. So then I had to reverse engineer the process, learn how to enjoy food again, learn how to have a body that I felt good and hot in, but also have a life, because I like a margarita every now and again, you know, and I should be able to have one without feeling any level of guilt.
Absolutely. No, I love all of that. I think it's so important to be able to find that balance, you know, and again, not demonify anything in particular.
Exactly.
And so, so much of our culture says, you know, like, hey, you need to, you know, eat chickens and rice. And you know, like, I don't want those clients that we serve to show up to birthday parties with boiled chicken and like, not the cake, you know?
Yeah. And their kids are seeing that. And so then we're creating this generation, the next generation of, well, mom didn't eat cake at the birthday party. So is cake bad? And it perpetuates. And I have clients now that, you know, my client Melissa is down 90 pounds and she had type 2 diabetes, which is now reversed. Her kid is going to the gym with her.
Oh, I love that.
And so now we're creating generational health instead of generational dysfunction.
That's awesome.
And
I love what you're doing.
It's cool. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I like that. Buddha saying, you know, one of the biggest forms of human suffering is looking at an old photo of yourself and thinking you're the same person.
Yeah.
Like, we have the capacity to completely change our perception and our reality, like walking out of this room from walking into this room.
Yeah,
and it sounds like you're helping people remember that capacity on the daily. What are some big things that you feel like you've done for your own kind of mental health?
Well, a lot. I have done pretty much everything that there is for my mental health journey. I was a very, very anxious teenager. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety and depression at 15, 16.
Oh, wow.
I was overusing medication, like in an attempt to like, it was semi-suicidal, but also just numbing. I was hospitalized for suicidal thoughts at 16.
Wow.
And so I was in therapy for a long time. I took antidepressants, and then through adulthood, same thing. I found that wellness was one of the like key points to keeping my mind healthy as well as my body, but that was a journey as well. I did ketamine treatments with you. Currently doing a form of cognitive behavioral therapy with a new coach, where you write your stories, both happy stories and traumatic stories, and kind of dive into the deeper meaning behind it. So a little bit of everything, and then continued self-growth through reading and education and anything that I can do to like really identify my own triggers and my own setbacks. And because I want to be able to see myself, and there's a lot in my childhood that was highly traumatic, and I didn't know that shaped me as an adult. I had no idea. And now, like through the ketamine treatments and now the cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm like, oh, that started at like 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
Through like parents screaming and like it wasn't physically abusive, but it was mentally abusive. And so I have always been of the mindset, and I think also because of the generation I grew up in, it's like, suck it up, just deal with it. But like, here's an antidepressant, which I have no problem with. I'm using one now, but you also have to do, we were just talking about this too, you have to do work outside of that. It's not magic. It's just, fitness is the same way. There's pharmaceuticals for losing weight, but if you're not doing the work as to like why your coping mechanism is overeating, you're still going to overeat. For me, it was like, if I'm not doing the work to figure out why I'm coping in the way that I am, or why I feel like everything has to be extreme, or why I have like a huge trauma response anytime I hear yelling or screaming, I'm never going to get to the mindset and the space of health that I want to be in. And I fully believe that it is just as much mental as it is physical.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I love everything you just said. I was like, wow. I got the chills like multiple times. I really like that, name it to tame it, right? Because so many people don't even recognize where it's coming from. People think of trauma, I think in large part, as like war trauma, or, being physically beat or raped, or like all these really bad things. I am of the school of thought there's a big capital bold T's of trauma, right? Like the early and often physical, sexual, emotional abuse or neglect. We know neglect is often worse than abuse in a lot of ways, just because, you never have those needs met. That being said, they all stink. Right? And then there's little italic T's, so like you're watching a funny movie with a loved one, the sad part comes on with a puppy, and you're like, oh, isn't that sad? And they're like, oh, you stupid, Erin, that's not sad. It's like, oh, ouch, right? It all adds up. So I think there's 4 types of trauma. There's your own like historical trauma, and that's every like catecholamine or stressor exposure that you've had since your parents' 2 zygotes first met, like the egg and the sperm, all the stress your mom had during pregnancy, your actual childbirth, everything before you started forming concrete memories, and everything to where you're at now. Then there's the intergenerational, like epigenetics, and we're just scratching the surface on the science of all that. Super interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, we know at least 5 generations behind us the trauma that our great-great-great-grandparents went through prior to procreating mutated their genetics at least enough to pass on increased hypervigilance to us. That kind of pucker state, right? The third type of trauma is what I call societal. We know in general it just kind of sucks out there, right? It's just hard. Like everyone's doing their best, but we're all coming at it with our own trauma. And the fourth one is environmental. So you're looking like microplastics, cell phone radiation, like all those things that you really can avoid, right? That being said,
that makes sense.
Like what you went through with the ketamine treatments is what we see a lot of people, like they get those insights, in regards to like what's potentially holding them back from being where they want to be. And you really touched on a huge point that I like to emphasize to anyone that I see. Everything's multimodal. There's no, silver bullet. There's a million silver BBs, right? And so like the fitness is one thing, and, connection and community is another thing, and then potentially like ketamine is a catalyst for change, or sometimes the pharmaceuticals can be really helpful. You get that first win and then you can build off of it.
Yeah.
And so I love all the things that you said in regards to what you're working with, because again, the more avenues you address a problem from, more likely you are to get capture. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and you've been dealing with since you were 16, and you've
long
been
time
inpatient, and, and probably before you were 8, but you first noticed it around the time you were 8.
Yeah,
because like if your parents were yelling that much, it probably happened like in utero, and there was probably intergenerational component. So
interesting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I know, it is so interesting.
Yeah.
It's such an exciting time to be in medicine because we're proving past wisdom.
It's really cool. Yeah. And it's cool too, because I feel like for me, it's something I can be in control of. When I felt like I was so out of control, they did this to me. Well, it's like, yeah, they did, and they shouldn't have. But at the same time, I have control over it now. I just need to have awareness of it. And I think that's what the ketamine did. And now the further therapy that I'm doing, and it sucks. It's hard. It's not something I look forward to. And I do it every week for 2 hours. It's a lot of work. I'm writing down these stories of my past trauma, and he has me read it 3 times, one just normal, one slow, and then one with a breath in between each sentence. And then we're pulling out lines that talk about, like, I was just a kid, essentially, those kinds of things. It's like, you shouldn't have taken on any sort of responsibility there. You were 9 years old, but 42-year-old me is still trying to heal that. And it like translated to every part of my life. I thought having a hot body would fix that. Well, it certainly did not. Like, it was cool. Yeah, it was like, it was fun, and it's fun still. Like, I feel like I look good and I feel good. But when I got to my body composition goal, I was still like, nope. We ain't there yet.
Right. Yeah. Again, that multimodal approach. And I love what you're doing, but it definitely sounds like a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, just ongoing. It's always ongoing. So, amazing work for everything you're doing for yourself.
Thanks.
There, and I love it.
Yeah.
And so you're doing the 8Wellness Collective. You sent me like a diet guide this morning. I appreciate you.
I can't stop. Sunday morning.
Right. Yeah. You're like, I'm going to bed, and then I see your comments.
I know, it's rough. Online work is really hard because it never stops. So that's my next goal. 2025 is boundaries with my work but I love it. And that's the thing too, is like, I love talking to people and I love giving them that aha moment, but I also need to disconnect sometimes too. So that will be my goal for next year, is just to set some timeline boundaries for work and for myself.
Yeah, that's great. Now you need to like program the AI Erin, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I did one of those Hey Gen things. Have you seen that? And so it's like it's an AI avatar creator. And it like, so you send it like a 2-minute video of yourself, and then so now my persona is probably online in some super
that's funny.
Or something.
Yeah.
But then I had it generate a whole video of me talking that it was just a script that I like put in there, and it was like me talking, but it looked like dead inside.
That's why. Because it was.
Yeah. There's some craziness to that.
Oh, that's cool.
There's this other conversation thing I saw, and it was like a podcast, like real people talking. And I don't know what kind of programming language I used or whatever, but then the person who created it, because it was like all AI, they told the podcast that, like, the 2 podcasters that were AI generated, that they were AI generated, and after this episode they were going to be cut off, and like they had this existential crisis, and they were talking it through. It was wild. It's wild times we live in.
Yeah, AI is really interesting. I mean, it's a huge part of the world that I'm in, and I'm a little old school, so I haven't dove much into AI yet, but I'm sure that I'll get there eventually. I mean, there's AI fitness coaching, and I'm a long form copywriter. I love to write, and there's a lot of people using AI to do similar things to that as well. Which kind of makes me sad.
Right.
Because
your posts are so good.
Thank you.
They're so thought provoking, and like you take so much ownership of your own stuff, and you speaking your truth, I think really resonates with people.
Well, thank you.
You're able to be so real. So good job, representing that.
Thanks. I love it. I'm, like I said, I'm a little bit old school. I like to write, And I find my people that way though, because
Yeah.
if you get through one of my long-winded posts and you resonate, I think people feel seen and heard. And we live, and especially being in the online world in your 40s is really interesting because most of the people are younger than me and they're really good at it. They're like, they can make the reels and they're having conversations with themselves and they're in different backgrounds and they have all these, and I didn't know how to do that. That wasn't the generation I grew up in. We had MySpace, but it was, you know, like, and very, very simple Facebook. And so I had to kind of like take me and put it into that space. And I think I've been able to find my people through long form content and email, which is kind of cool that there's still folks out there that resonate with just the old school kind of content also.
Yeah, for sure. I know there's so much stuff that you can do, and it doesn't seem like you necessarily need to do it,
right?
You know, like sometimes when you try to do all that, it just comes out inauthentic anyways.
Absolutely.
You're like, this isn't me, and then everyone else is like, that's not her.
Yeah, you look awkward, you feel awkward. Yep.
Well, that's good. Like I said, I love your stuff. I think.
Thank you.
I think that we're like the same cloth in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Came from stuff and been working on things, and you're always trying to be a little bit better.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I met you and I feel like it felt like I knew you already. And so, I mean, I felt comfortable in the space and getting treatment. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't even know how I found you, but like I said,
I'm glad you did.
It's kismet. Yeah, it was meant to be. That's how I found my current coach that's helping me with the cognitive behavioral therapy too. He was at I went to this weird business. I thought it was a business conference. It felt very culty when I got there. So he literally like was there until lunchtime. It was a 3-day conference and left at lunch. And I'm like, this is a hard pass. But he was also there and followed me for years on social media. And then I posted something about looking for some work on like heavy duty, like trauma work. And he's like, that's what I do. And so cool. I had to be at that thing to have a connection with him. And so the universe provides when you're looking for it.
Yeah, so it wasn't all for naught.
Yeah, exactly. I was really mad because it was not cheap. You know, those coaching conferences.
Right.
Yeah. So, I was telling my husband that the other day. I'm like, the people that I just connect to somehow, like it started with therapy and then I found you and then I just continued to search for the right person to help me with the work and he found me. And so I think when you're doing the right work and putting yourself out there in the right way, like the people find you.
Right. Your people the alignment and all of those
it's cool.
Things. Yeah, it is super cool. Yeah, I love that. Like when you're trying to force something to happen, then it never seems like it works well.
Yeah.
But when you're like just living your truth and being authentic. I went to this cool conference in Sedona. It was like a seminar. It was just like a few-hour thing, but it was like the best hook ever for advertising. It was like better than sex, the question mark. And then it turned out like there was all these great speakers, and like what's better than sex is like radical authenticity, like being able to like live your truth, with like your expression, with your like just kind of everything, like who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Seems like you're doing that, Erin.
I'm trying to. Yeah. I am really trying to. I want to be like actually happy, like, and I don't think people are living that way. We're all fighting with each other and we don't connect anymore. Social media has put us in a place where like we think we're connecting, but we're not connecting. We're not connected with ourselves. We're not connected with our bodies. We want a look, but we don't understand how to get that look. And like, so for me, it's all about education and implementation, those two things together. And I have to do it too.
Right.
Because I want to tell other people what to do. Or, I mean, I don't want to tell them what to do. I want to share with them my truth and help them find theirs. But I can't do that if I'm messed up.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I like that. I always say like the journey to wellness is just that. It's a journey. There may be plateaus along the way. But like that Ram Dass quote. Like just when you think you're in a good headspace, like go spend a weekend with your family.
For real. Yeah.
Like, there's all those buttons.
A phone call. Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. And just like enjoying the ride with that, I think is important.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what like this place. So this is rocked. And I know I haven't even given you like a full kind of introduction to this place. But so Revitalize Ketamine Clinic, you know, kind of narrow funnel, like it's kind of an extreme intervention for people that, you know, other stuff hasn't really worked, or they're ready for, you know, something bigger. It doesn't have to be like that, looked at that big, but I do like to think of it as kind of that sledgehammer in your tool shed.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not using a sledgehammer to hang photos.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so like having those other tools in addition to, but this is ROC. So it's Revitalize, Optimize, and Harmonize Clinic and Therapeutics.
I love it.
And I call it Rocked Wellness Bar because it's really about connecting with people who are also trying to become the best versions of themselves, you know? And so like we have like these functional nootropic drinks, you know, so that are kind of like uplifting. Have you ever tried any of those?
I think like the mushroom.
Yeah.
Those, yeah.
Yeah. They kind of, like, we have these little saints, and we have these breezes, and so they use like lion's mane and reishi and tiger tail and all these like functional mushroom mix. So like you kind of get this uplifted kind of pro-social vibes, and then you actually feel a lot better the next day.
That's cool.
Versus having like a number of mixed drinks.
Yeah.
And you're like, I was social, but now my head hurts.
Yeah, I feel gross.
Yeah. I feel bloated because then I went to the drive-thru afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like, you know, drive them in with like the chili goat cold blend and the sunlight and infrared sauna, and, you know, some like assistance with weight loss. Like we'll do like the GLP-1s here, you know, with the MIC. And so like the GLP-1s are like tirzepatide and semaglutide, and the MIC is the methadone and acetylcholine and cyanocobalamin. And again, it's a multimodal approach. Like my objective is always less is more, you know? And so like getting people off of medications is ideally.
Right.
That being said, like we know, you know, obesity is a killer because you hold on to that, you know, the central fat and then like that, you know, leads to all sorts of other things, and impaired glucose metabolism, all those things that you're working with clients on. Yeah. And some people just need a kickstart sometimes. You know?
Absolutely.
And again, the dose makes the medicine, the dose makes the poison. So we're doing like lots of cool stuff with that, and the hug flower, like that lymphatic massage. I don't know if maybe we'll hook you up with that afterwards. Try it out. It's pretty cool. It's like the best hug you'll ever get.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. And you know, like the body keeps the score, right? Like sometimes I'll see people who've been going to a talk therapist for like decades, and they don't really get that much out of it,
right?
Because like human language is a huge blessing and a curse, in that it's a giant reduction valve, right?
Yeah.
So that you can talk about all your stuff all you want. Oftentimes that's not how your body like feels it. So the two things that I say is name it to tame it, and you need to heal it to feel it. Yeah. You know, because we get taught like sadness is bad. It isn't the sadness. It's like the crying or whatever. Like sometimes our caregivers, people that care about us the most, are trying to protect us, and like, oh, you can't cry. It's like, oh, but now I'm confused. So just shove this down into my body, right? And then it comes back like decades later as like fibromyalgia or chronic regional pain syndrome, or, you know, just like self-medicating through food. Yeah. We all do like, again, I think we live on the bell curve.
Alcohol, all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And so that one's really cool. And like, again, the body keeps the score. Bessel van de Kolk's work. Like,
I read it.
Oh, did you? Yeah. I don't recommend people read it because it's so activating, but I recommend people understand
it is intense. So we have a book club within my community. Oh, cool. And one of my clients suggested it. I also wouldn't really recommend people reading it, but once I say I'm going to do something, I just do it. It is intense. Yeah. And it's very clinical, and I don't know that it's like super helpful for most people, because for like, I listened and read it because it took me so long to like start to process it. There's a lot of other great books out there that are a little bit easier to digest and like give you some like step-by-step. But I read it.
Yeah. Well, good job. Good job getting through that one. That one's a toughie.
I do deserve a high five for that one.
Sure. Yeah. I know. Like I said, especially people with trauma. Like, I definitely don't recommend them read that one, just because, it's like so much like, oh, and then you're all activated and you're like, what do I do with this?
Right.
And you're the next chapter and you're even more activated.
Yeah. Yep.
You'd wrap around care if you start reading that book.
It's a lot. It was a lot. It's good. I mean, I feel... I think I approach it a little bit differently now, because I want to be empowered by it, and I want to be like, this happened to me and it is a part of who I am, and I like, I can recognize that, but a lot of people aren't there yet. This started at 16 and I'm 42, so this took me however many years in between that is to get to a point where, especially my anxiety, like part of it, I like,
Mm-hmm.
because it keeps me propelled forward, it keeps me driven, but I don't want it to derail me anymore. I don't want it to keep me up at night anymore. So like there's parts of that that are me that I appreciate,
Absolutely.
and so like I feel like at this point I can take something like that and use it for the healing that I need, but in the beginning, 0%.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. Like, and that's, the biggest part of how I emphasize. I'll give you, I got a new workbook that I go through with people that I think was just in development when you worked with us. So I'll give you a copy before we go. I'll grab it here in a minute even and show you to it. But I like that, it happened for me instead of it happened to me.
Yeah.
And so like being able to make that shift, like that makes me who I am, those composition, those layers of onions.
Yes.
And then the intensity, those coping strategies that we develop, because sometimes people's coping strategies look like withdrawal, right? Like in depression, some people it's like anxiety or hypervigilance, every plate looks hot because when I was young, all the plates were hot and everything was dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I read a lot about food related trauma because that's what I do. And that's interesting too, because there's a lot of things that manifest how we just feed ourselves. It's like if you grew up with food insecurity, you may be prone to overeating because your 7-year-old self is telling you that food isn't around the corner again, even if it is. And so I mean, it's like it's just completely intertwined with who we are, and that's why I think it's so important to have these conversations. And I try to bring in mental health professionals as much as I can. I've had Lucas was on my podcast, and anyone that does mindset work, and people kind of tune out, but I think the conversation is becoming bigger because they want to hear like, this is what to do to lose body fat. This is what to do to get the dopamine hit that you want. But it's like, you're never going to get that forever if we don't have these important conversations about like, why are you overeating? Why can't you stop going out for cocktails every single weekend when you're mad that the scale doesn't go down? Like there's a reason, and it's not just because you can't. There's something in here that's causing that. Or I had a client recently tell me that when she's at home, she's overeating and she doesn't do that at work. And I'm like, well, what's happening at home that makes you feel like you need to be coping or feel better? Like let's look at that a little bit, because or maybe you're not busy enough. Maybe you need to have some activities planned that you enjoy during your time off. And if you're just sitting on the couch and watching TV, then that leads to snacking. It doesn't necessarily have to be this huge thing like this like massive trauma. It could just be that you need to keep yourself busy. There's a lot that goes into it, but people don't think of it that way. They're just like, tell me what to eat and I'm gonna lose weight.
Like, totally. No, I love that. I just made this like post that was like about like how to lose weight, and it's like boiled it down, like oversimplified for sure, but one of the big parts was like move more, eat less, or, like be mindful with your eating. But then the third part, and I thought that was the most important, was like de-stress,
Yes.
Because like if you're stressed out, like your body thinks that there's a real chance of starvation in your future because you're gonna have to run away from this situation, from like a evolutionary standpoint. And so like you're holding on to that. And then your body's like, well, no, I don't want to get rid of these fat stores because these may very well save my life.
Yeah, especially women. I mean, I talk about that a lot in my content, and women don't understand that our bodies are meant to make babies. Whether I don't have children, we're not planning on it, whether you want to or not, or whether you're done or not, that is a thing. And so if you're stressed, it's going to do everything it can to hold on to body fat that will keep you healthy enough to sustain pregnancy. There's a lot of things that go into it that aren't just like eat chicken and broccoli. Like it's and what we don't understand is like our bodies are in like this fight or flight mode, and food is widely available to us now, but it used to not be. You'd have to like shoot animals and gather crops, and there was food scarcity times. And I have a lot of clients in like December, and they're like, I don't know why, I just don't want to do this right now. I don't want to diet. And it's like, because in the winter food used to be less,
Right.
and we would like cozy down and hunker down and move less, and there weren't crops, and so we weren't burning as many calories, and so evolutionary, like
Mhm.
it translates to modern culture, but
Absolutely.
modern culture still gives us a bunch of food, and so
Right.
we're moving less and still eating the same amount of calories because we have food readily available, so then we gain body fat. It's
Right.
like that awareness is key to the entire picture too. It's just not about eating less and moving more. Yes, it is, but that's oversimplified.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, no, I love what you said too about like basically the person you were speaking of, need to have more positive activities in
yeah.
your life. I like to, it's a silly euphemism, whatever, but idle hands are the devil's playthings,
Mhm.
so like the more sedentary you are, the more you're going to ruminate probably
Mhm.
on things like the shoulda, woulda, coulda, didn't does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And then also like I like James Clear's book, Atomic Habits,
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, well, like problem for most of us is our pantry, right? It's just right there. It's got all
Yes.
those processed boxed foods that are
Yeah.
so easily accessible and they last for years. So like you're like, well, that's I'll have that forever, that box
Yep.
of Cheez-Its. But
Yeah. Or if you have, especially with people with kids, because there's
yeah.
snacky foods. I always tell them, like, put the kid food into a tub high.
Mm.
And then if you're going to eat, like, you'll get it down for your kids to eat. It's not a big deal if your kid has a few Cheez-Its or Goldfish crackers or whatever. But if you're going
Right.
to over consume them, if
Yeah.
you have to get a stool out and think that process
Right.
through, it's really just about the thought process. Because it's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't need those Cheez-Its. I
Mm-hmm.
can do something else. I'm not really hungry. I have to go get in the closet, get my step stool out, get the box out, open it
Right.
up.
Yeah.
And if you start creating those steps, I mean, it might sound extreme, but it's like, you have to start thinking through the process and why. Are you hungry and want a snack? Then have some Goldfish crackers.
Mm-hmm.
But are you just snacking because you're bored and there's nothing else to do?
Right.
Well, if you have to go through all the steps to get there, you probably will decide that you don't actually need or another serving, right?
Right,
So
yeah, yeah. You want to make it like easier to succeed
yeah,
and harder to
yeah.
fail, and so create those
It's just
conditions
some
for
awareness.
yourself.
Yeah, just some awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's hard for us to have the thought process when all you have to do is open the fridge. But
Right.
if you create a little bit of a barrier, it's not a huge one. I'm not saying don't buy it or never eat it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're overindulging on something frequently, like, that little barrier is a mind trick.
Right.
And
Yeah, and making like the fruit and vegetable bowl like front
yeah,
and
put
center,
that in the
so
front.
then
Yeah.
you walk past that and you're like, oh, actually, that does look pretty good.
Yeah, pre-cut. Yeah, get the
Yeah.
pre-cut celery and carrot sticks and
Oh
some
yeah.
hummus cups, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, have fruit like apple slices, those kinds of things ready and available to you, and like right in your line of vision. It's like,
Right.
it's all about tricking the brain.
Right. Yeah. Create those habits that make it easier to succeed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, that's another thing that Rocked is kind of based on, is like we're all a combination of 5 people we spend the most time with, right? And so trying to be around people who are also like trying to be successful with that, because if
Yeah.
you're around people that are always overeating and drinking, excessive amounts of
Yeah.
calories in whatever form, it's going to be hard to not do the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember the number, but it's high. It's somewhere like in the 90s, or like 90% like more successful if your community is doing what you're doing, and if you have accountability. And so that's why coaching or something like this is so important, because you're coming into a space of people that are like-minded,
Mm-hmm.
and you just kind of like, it becomes who you are.
Right.
Instead of going to the bar on Saturday night, and you do cool stuff. You have the fire dancers,
Yeah.
and like, it's cooler to come here and sit in the sauna, and you can have a conversation with somebody who's also trying to get healthy. And then you make plans for next Saturday to go to a spin class. And that's how that, like, it snowballs into
Yeah.
exactly what you want your life to be. And you don't even have to really try. But if you're going
Right.
to the bar every Saturday night, you're going to make plans to go to the bar the next Saturday night too.
Right.
And that's,
Yeah.
I don't like saying those things, because it's okay to go to the bar sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
But if your goal is to be healthier, gain muscle, lose body fat, and that you have to do more of the things that give you that,
Mm-hmm.
and less of the things that don't. So that's
Right.
the balance.
Yeah, having like the dances like we do, social sober dance here,
Yeah,
where
so
like,
cool.
have to be wasted to dance
Right.
it around.
Yeah, you can dance sober. Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
It's like, wait,
It's
what? No.
once you get over like the initial like awkwardness of that, you can, yes, you can dance sober.
Yeah. And movement is medicine. You know,
Yeah.
whatever way you do it. Like just sitting here, I'm like, I want to do something.
Right?
Like I'll go
Jump
for a
up
walk
and down
or
a little
something.
bit.
We need to
Yeah.
figure out a walking podcast. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, totally. These microphones are pretty solid.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you and everything you do for our community, and I just feel like there's so much. And again, you know, your realness, I think, really translates with how you present yourself. And you know, like, yeah, sometimes like you put out so much of that long form copy that I was like curious. I'm like, does she like, are you using AI? And obviously you aren't.
No,
the way that you said
no, that's actually part of my therapy for myself. It helps me to. I do it first thing in the morning, so it's my morning routine every day. I get up, you know, go to the bathroom. I go downstairs, grab my cup of coffee and my pug. And
What's your pug's name?
Wallace. Yeah, we have 3, but he's my guide. He likes to lay with me in the mornings.
I love it.
And I go back in bed and I write my copy for the day. And it's just whatever I'm feeling in the moment or what the community is talking about. And it's, for me, it's therapeutic because I fully put myself out there. Everything that I do, I talked about my ketamine treatments. I've talked about now the cognitive behavioral therapy. I've talked about suicidal thoughts in my teens and depression throughout my life. My body composition journey, you'll see pictures of me that I'm not super proud of. But I think there's so much in, like, everything on social media is the highlight reel. And mine is kind of too, but in a way that shows you that like it used to not be. Because now we have this house in Mexico and I'm posting pictures on the beach all the time, but it's like I used to like wonder how I was going to pay my rent every month. And we talk about that too. And I think it's important to share those stories and also share that you can come away from them, because there's a lot of people who don't believe that they have a way out. They don't have the money to do so, or the financial means, or any or the knowledge or the education. And I didn't either. I just slowly started implementing things. And when I had a little bit more money, I got a coach. And when I had a little bit more money, I did therapy. And when I had a little bit more money, I did ketamine treatments. You know, it was just like whatever I could do to continue. And when I didn't have money, I read, or I walked, or I was at Buffalo Park a shit ton.
I love that. So,
you know, it's like, it's those kinds of things that like, it doesn't have to cost anything. Or it can cost little, like a book. You can get a bookman's book for $9 or $10. And
consistency is key.
You just keep doing it.
Like keep working. You get one foot in front of the other. You know, like that's where you start making progress. Most people like say, oh, you know, they've been working on something for 5 days or a week and it hasn't worked. There's no traction. It's like, well, it's gonna take longer than
that. Well, and that's the thing too, is like understanding time. And that's my mentor. He also is a long form copywriter, and he's the one, he saw some of my work. I wasn't doing that all the time, and he's like, you got to write every day. So it was a year ago in July, so now it's been, you know, a year and a half plus. I just started writing every single day. That's at least 5 days a week, but I try to do 7. And it's those are all me, all of my words. No, I've never used AI. That's straight from me. So the next step hopefully will be a book, because I love it, and I just want to share the realness that like is like what is possible with more people. And I think that long form copy is the way to share it, and so book form is probably the way to go. But just gotta find time to do that.
I mean, you probably put it all out. You just need to aggregate it. You know? Like if you have like a file on your computer that has like all your stuff, if you can, you know, put it into something and kind of boil it down. Well, that is an ongoing thing. Like I started my book a while ago, and then like I was very consistent for a while, and then like all these other things transpired and hadn't been, because I'd get up and it was like best stretch, so get back there, but get up and then I'd meditate for 10 minutes. I wouldn't even touch my phone, you know, like waking up without an alarm, and then I'd go right to like this stationary bike thing that I had where I had my laptop, and I'd just like chill and write some, you know. So my book's on the intrinsic response methodology and talks about like always be your own best healer.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
that's kind of my, ethos when I provide the ketamine treatments. And that's why we, try to noise canceling headphones and eye shades so that, you can remember how capable you are, and then the multimodal approach. Like I wanted to show you this because like, and then I'll give you this when you're leaving here. But the this pie graph that I created, so basically like showing like how much work like the ego dissolution agents, like we were talking about before we started filming, some of those other ones that people are using elsewhere, like ibogaine and ayahuasca and psilocybin where it's legal. Like ketamine's here now and it's legal, and they all work the same way in my opinion, where you're letting those walls down safely, because those walls are designed to protect us, right? And like the anxiety, the hypervigilance, the type A-ness, like it isn't inherently bad, right? It was really helpful in getting you to where you're at, and being able to kind of keep things in line. So you don't want to like say, hey, like get out of here. Like that's where you get people in trouble. They judge it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, thank you. I love you. Thanks for getting me here.
Yep.
Also, I don't need you like always driving the bus.
Correct. Yes, that is the thing. It's like, I need you to go away sometimes. Yeah. Let me enjoy my life a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, here I talk about it, but having that kind of feeling safe to feel safe. Like I like to think, the gazelle gets caught by the lion, right? It goes into one of the 7 F's, the fight, flight, or freeze are the 3 main ones people think of. And then the lion's like, cool, I got my prey, starts stalking around being a lion. The gazelle realizes it's got an opening, pops up, and it starts running. And it runs. And then 3 to 5 miles down the road, it's got this physiological shudder, this release, right? And that's still built into our DNA as mammals. And I think that the ketamine and the other ego dissolution agents work really well to kind of clear that stuff out, from a neurochemical perspective. So just to start with feeling safe to feel safe, right? And then all those other things, like because you can tell people to eat healthy, you can tell people to work out, you can tell people to go to therapy, but if you're just in this pucker state, it's not going to track. It's not going to track. And so like, as you kind of move through, the amount of work that the, ego dissolution agent does, because we do a series of 6 over 3 weeks in combination with some sort of integration therapy 1 to 2 days afterwards. And we also offer the group therapy that takes place once a week. And, through that, we've seen like, especially I've been in healthcare since 2004, and like the treatment outcomes that I see are just amazing. It's cool. Yeah. But then, I want to see again, that sledgehammer get put back to the tool shed, right? And then those other things like reducing toxicity, that's so important. Yeah. Because people are around those toxic people in their life. It's going to be really hard to not want those walls up to protect you, right? And then the wellness living, that speaks for itself, but like eating healthy and, being physically active and then making things better is like where you actually move forward, where you feel like you're taking tangible steps forward. Like that's super important. Like, like you said, you were able to do a bunch of development work during the pandemic where, it was like really good for your business to be able to transition to remote, and you were like uniquely positioned to be able to assimilate a lot of that and be able to grow with that. So like, you're so awesome.
Oh, thank you. You are too. I love what you're doing. I love what you're putting out there. I like that it's an alternative to, and I also like that you're combining pharmaceuticals with like the modalities for like actual healing, because people ask me all the time as a health and wellness coach what I think about, especially the new pharmaceutical. They're not new, but the trend is the semaglutides and the GLP-1s, and it's like in my practice, I want to start with making sure that we have the lifestyle in place first,
right?
Before we introduce pharmaceuticals, because my goal, like yours, is to get people on limited pharmaceuticals or pharmaceuticals as needed. I, with my anxiety, have a problem with sleeping, and I've tried everything natural to sleep better. I take pharmaceuticals to sleep. Yeah. I don't have a problem with them, but that like I think we jump straight to that as like a magic situation, and it's really not. We're not diving into the real reason why we can't lose weight, or especially like you mentioned, obesity. I have recommended GLP-1s and those types of products to my clients who have morbid obesity. It just helps them like calm that food noise, like give them, like you said, some wins, be able to not stop at fast food after work for that
Right.
healing that they need. But I don't recommend it to everybody. And if
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, and I also will tell you, I have a client, or she's not a client, she will be, she had some like disordered eating thoughts, and she's like, should I join your program or should I work on my disordered eating? And I'm like, you got to start with the disordered eating. She's in therapy, and she messaged me last week and was like, I got into therapy, I'm working on some really hard stuff right now, and you were totally right, I needed this first. And like, because you would have dove into work with me and been mad that you weren't immediately losing weight and trying to starve yourself even further. So it's like, I'm not taking clients that aren't ready to work with me. And I'm also like, I have no problem with pharmaceuticals. I think people will see my content and think that I do, but it's like, I want to have a conversation first about balanced eating and protein intake and fiber intake and mental health and muscle, because most of us, especially women, are lacking in metabolic tissue. And it's like, if we can implement those things and you don't actually need a pharmaceutical, why not?
Right. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Because you have no side effects. And then if we do implement those things, you have more power to go to you or a medical professional that can prescribe these medications and be like, I've been eating high protein, I've been eating high fiber, I've been eating in a caloric deficit. Yes, I'm losing weight, but it's slow, and I'm working out 3 or 4 times a week and I still am not getting where I need to go. Then we implement a GLP-1 or something along those lines, and you have that empowered like education to come to your medical provider. And I think women especially are not treated as well in especially like Western medicine. And that is really hard. And so that's being able to know, when I go to my doctor, I'm like, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong, and I've done all of these things to try to fix it first. So now what do you got for me? And that's coming from a place of empowerment as opposed to a place of like of just like being desperate. And I think that is the difference, and where we have to start weighing out our options with what treatment that we decide to go with first.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Like, again, I always think less is more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, especially when it comes to putting things in our body,
Yeah.
you know, and so you want to go to the low lying fruit first. And if that works, awesome. Like, you know, like I think the odds are stacked against us. And I agree with you, particularly for the Western women. You know, you're supposed to wear so many hats, right? You're supposed to be like this caregiver. You're supposed to be a mother. You're supposed to be like this empathic person. And you're supposed to have, you know, the rockin' body. And you're supposed to like be,
but not too hot. But like,
like that's exhausting. Like, more power. Like, good job. Like, juggling those hats. Like, I don't know if I could do it. That being said, like, I definitely think that there's, you know, some wonderful things. And, you know, I think, you know, I'm a cautious optimist by trade. And I feel like we're on the precipice of a human evolution, and the biggest thing will be going from the no because to the yes and, you know, kind of getting away from that scarcity mindset.
I hope so.
Going more into, and, you know, so like, I think part of that is embracing that divine feminine and the divine masculine, where you can be a man and it can be an okay thing. You know, you can be a woman and it can be an okay thing, and just like all those things. So it's I think we're, you know, exciting times and good things are coming. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm really excited for it. I think there's a lot more of this happening that people are seeing and trending towards it. And so, and things that I do, and I know a lot of other practitioners in the space of health and wellness that are helping people in like just get to know themselves. And I think that's the most important thing, is like getting to know yourself and what you really want, because what we think we want and what we really want are often two separate things. And the work that you do and the work that I do, I think, are in alignment with that. And it's really, really important, because what I have noticed when I'm working with people, it's like, they don't even know what they want. They just like, I want weight loss. Well, what does that mean to you? What is weight loss going to do for you? Well, I just want to feel better in my clothes. I want to, and then we start getting into it. It's like, well, I want my kids to not be afraid of food. I want to feel confident in photos. I want to live longer. I want to reverse my type 2 diabetes. Those are the reasons. Weight loss is boring. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
Like giving your kids the opportunity to not have type 2 diabetes, that's the goal.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Like you said, breaking that intergenerational trauma.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. And doing this kind of work and putting people in these kinds of spaces is what will do that, as opposed to like what the opposite is. That's predatory. And it's like, just eat this bar every day and you'll lose weight. But that like, then
like a Mean Girls, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We're like getting away from that. Like we're like, women should be supporting each other. And I coach men too, like I said, but we've been chronically non-supportive of each other. And that's the thing too, I think, for women to listen to in the space is like, we need to hold space for each other and what we have been conditioned to believe about who we need to be and what our bodies need to look like all of the time. And that's what I think the majority of my business is about, is really more holding space. And if you want to be shredded, I'll give you that too. But then you might decide that you don't want to be shredded. You might just want to like look kind of fit, like I call it lived in fitness. It's like you have some tone, lean muscle mass, but you don't have to have a six pack all the time, because you do want to have a couple margaritas on the weekend, whatever you decide you want. But most people don't know. They just say weight loss. So,
Well, I love that you hit on that why, because the why is so important. Like with big enough why and how is possible, right? And so like the why is like to help people help themselves. Like the how is like getting connected with you and me, and the what is like the least interesting part.
Right. It is. Yeah. It's really not important until you figure out the why behind it and the feeling behind it. And I think that's all, like, that's what this is too, and what you're doing and what I got from you and what I got from ketamine treatments. And it was helping me to like the huge picture of figuring out my why. And so now like I take it and I can help other people figure out theirs as well.
I love that. No, you're doing awesome stuff, and I'm so excited for everything that you're doing. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on today. It was fun. I'm super excited to do it again.
For sure. You have to come on mine.
Oh, that'd be cool. It'd be really cool for sure. And I'll send you all the audio and stuff on this. And
that'd be great.
Use that and just rebrand it. I'm totally cool with that.
I'll share it all over the place.
Awesome, rad, perfect. All right, cool. Well, any closing remarks? Anything you want to touch on that you haven't?
I think if you're out there and you're struggling, whether it's with your physical body or your mental health or both, like just know that there is help out there, and to start just looking and researching. Some books I read, The Courage to Be Disliked this year, incredible. It talks about interpersonal relationships and how they affect our day-to-day life, and I recommend everybody read it. And you can get it on Amazon for like $8, I think. So that's a good first step to a cheap one.
Excellent.
And
The Courage to Be Disliked.
It's incredible.
Okay, cool, nice.
Read it. But there's help out there, and it doesn't have to cost. I think that's the other thing, is this cost barrier. It doesn't have to cost a ton of money. It could if you wanted to.
For sure.
But you build up on that. So.
Absolutely. No, we're all works in progress.
Right?
Exactly. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Erin. I really appreciate you.
This was so fun.
This was fun. Thanks for taking the time. This is for you.
Oh, thank you. Excited.
Thanks for tuning in and watching another Mental Wealth Moves podcast on your favorite platform. I'm your host, Casey Dubrovic. You just enjoyed a whole hour conversation with myself and Erin McDonald. And if you want to learn more about either of our adventures, you can follow me more and check out the show notes, and check out Erin at 8Wellness Collective, as well as her cool online presence. And thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, what is good for you is good for the universe.